Hello, everyone. This is Rashana, your truth teller. Thank you for tuning in, if you are tuning in or rewinding this. I'm here on Thursday. I'm going to be here every Thursday just to speak to you about some things that are important to me that should be important to most of us here in the state of New Jersey, maybe the city of Linden, and sometimes the United States of America. So, we have a new president. Congratulations, President Biden, and congratulations to the vice president, the first woman, Kamala Harris. She is the first woman of color elected. So congratulations to her. She has made history, and little girls all over are looking up to her. And that's an awesome thing. As a history maker myself, I'll just say I'm a Black American, and I would encourage Black American girls to take notice of the accomplishments of the women that you see in the media. Listen, even if you don't see them in the media and you read about them, parents, encourage your children because it's too far. The American history, we still shouldn't be having first. Like we just got the first Black senator in the state of Georgia. Are you kidding? Happy for him, absolutely, but he's the first ever. So there's a lot of work yet to be done, and we can do that if we educate ourselves and educate our children. So congratulations to them. I'm looking forward to whatever they are going to do differently. I know it's not going to be the Donald Trump administration. I mean, who would ever repeat that, for God's sake? Nevertheless, we know that, there's some history between the president and the vice president that some people of American Negro descent were not particularly fond of. However, we still most supported their candidacy in an effort for change. So sayonara, Donald Trump, and on to new beginnings, right? I'm glad there was no continued violence at the inauguration. I don't know if everybody watched it, but it was a show. So it was a good thing. And let's put the shows aside and get down to business, the people's business at this point. All right. Yes. Okay. Okay. Now, New Jersey, let's see. The state of New Jersey. What happened to the legal weed, people? Nothing. It's still not legal. What happened to decriminalization and social justice, people? Still a crime. And I talked to you last week about it. I'm just going to continue to talk about it and update the fact that it's still not legal. So don't go puffing your blunts and don't go, getting your baked goods out and infusing stuff like that, unless you're doing it, of course, in the privacy of your own home. But again, it's still not legal. Why? Because the New Jersey legislature failed. They left it up to the citizens to vote for something. Of course, people want to have legal marijuana. It's not just potheads, forgive the expression. You have people who don't want to go through the rigmarole of getting a medical cannabis card, right? Some people don't even have medical insurance, but have medical issues and have found that the herb, because that's what it is, has medicinal properties. So they're still using marijuana. Some people use the marijuana as an oil, the cannabis oil and the hemp and whatever stuff. But New Jersey failed, and we're still sitting here almost February, and it's still not legal because they didn't have the guts amongst themselves to hash it out, get the documents ready, and then go ahead and make the constitutional amendment to make any recreational marijuana and hashish legal, right? I forgot they took mushrooms out. I don't even know where that came from. Anyway, there's another bill. I don't think I mentioned it to you. I mentioned it briefly. There's a lot of talk now in the media, in politics at the federal level. They're talking about HR 40. I know Senator Cory Booker had, mentioned it. He sponsored it. And then the charge was taken up in the Congress by Congresswoman Jackson Lee. But I just want everybody to understand this is to create a commission to study slavery and to figure out ways that they could provide reparations to the ancestors of slaves. You heard me. New Jersey also has, well, there was an introduction last January 14th in the Assembly Bill A711, Senate Bill S322. You can look that up. But this is also reparations task force. Again, they would like to create a task force to go back and research slavery and then figure out a way to compensate the ancestors of slaves. Okay, yeah, I said it. I'm not trying to be funny, but you shouldn't have to create a commission. We know slavery was there. We understand that there's a slave mentality, but Africans were not the only slaves on this continent, on this land. Indians were slaves as well, albeit, most of the time they were captured after there was a battle amongst different tribes and Indians enslaved one another. But the slavery wasn't the same as the imported slavery, the chattel slavery, if you will. That was slavery. And those slaves, they did whatever they did. They were groomed and they were fought, or they were sacrificed, of course, for the tribal rituals. But why is it that nobody's talking about the natives? What about the reparations for the natives who were here, Black folks, right? Black Americans. Before America was called America, they were the indigenous people, my people, here on this continent. Yes, sir. Where are our reparations? I was just doing some research, and it was funny because people don't understand. I'm going to read this right here. It says 98% of African Americans are, in fact, Native Indians. Yes, we are. Light skin, dark skin, brown skin, high yellow, albinos, all of us. Most of us, 98%, are natives of this land. So, I mean, we're dying off because of the mixed breeding. I get it. You love who you love, or sometimes the mulatto comes about because of the slave master or the slave's master son, or the plantation owner. What is it? The overseer. I was laughing because I was trying to think of the cover of my book, Plantation Politics. It was the planter, the overseer, right? And the slave. What does it say? Planter, overseer. Yeah, the planter, the overseer, and the slave. And I like that. I liken that to the structure of politics. You have the chairman, the county boss, the city boss, and then you have the elected official, the slave. Anyway, let me get back to what I was talking about. So let's talk about reparations for real. You owe me, America. Don't pretend like you don't. And why do we have all these people of color running around here just proclaiming that everybody's ancestor is from Africa? Knock it off. There's reparations that are due to the natives as well. So it should just simply be reparations. Like, there shouldn't even have to be a commission. The slaves, documented slaves, African immigrant slaves, who some of whom ultimately, intermix with the natives, or the natives who, were not on the reservations, one of the 5 federally, approved reservations, they ended up being classified as Black or Negro. They were either, I'm talking about the census, actually, as a matter of fact, they were Black or Negro. Technically, they were actually natives, but because they did not domicile on the reservation, then when the census, folks came around, they were taxed and they were counted like regular Black people, freed or not. So they were counted as Black. They were classified as either half-breed. If they mix with white people, they were called half-breed. If they mix with black people, they were just straight called black. Some of them, before the Indians or natives started to get counted on the census, actually, I believe it was like 1860 or 1870. Officially, they actually put them all on the census instead of counting them separately. The instructions were to count them or list them as IND or half-breed. But, people are going to do whatever they're going to do. Just look at you, and then they just look at you, you're brown, so that you're automatically black before, they started classifying everybody as a Negro. But reparations are due. They're overdue, actually. You done gave reparations to Japanese folks. It's our turn. Stop trying to study it. Don't study it to death. Make it happen. Save the money on the commission meetings and the food and the beverage for those task force and meetings and make something happen. They're running around talking about COVID relief, and that's fine. That's all well and good. However, do you know that natives, the ones who, of course, aren't federally recognized, there are millions of us natives in the world. We don't belong to tribes because, the families did not register, or the tribe, there was no tribe, or back in Georgia when they burned up the courthouse, all the records got destroyed and all like that. But, you know what you know. Your family history is what it is. Reparations are due. But my fear, right, is that anyone who's brown now is going to claim that they are the ancestor of a slave and then have their hand out for some reparations, right? So to be clear, the only thing that should be studied is that person's lineage, right? So like I'm looking at my family. I just want to plug ancestry.com. They don't give me any money, but they have an awesome service. Like if, you just need a little bit of information, and you'll be able to find lots and lots of records. They even have Social Security records, let me tell you. And it's pretty intricate. You go in there, you just have some information. I'll give you an example. My aunt's name was spelled wrong or whatever. I knew she was my grandmother's sister, but because her name was spelled wrong, it did not appear when I did the search. So the only thing that these commissions should be doing is determining in what form or fashion the reparations will be and to whom they should go. Don't tell me just because you are brown that you are entitled to a reparations. And not for nothing, if you came here, if your family came to the United States of America post-slavery, don't put your hand out. We're talking about the people who worked and toiled on the soil here, even before, the whole slavery imports started. We were here, right? Our land was stolen from us. They tried to make treaties and all like that and ultimately destroyed them. And America still owes a lot of money. Look at, back, what is it? In the Dakotas, there's billions of dollars in the bank, and the natives don't want the money. They want their land back. So Joe Biden, that's one for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Give the folks their land back, right? And reparations like that probably wouldn't fly because it would be so costly and devastating to businesses and people who think that they own the land now. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the only thing that should happen for reparations. But I do believe reparations are due. I would personally be happy if they gave us a choice. What do you want? You want a plot of land? You want, so many thousands of dollars for your education expense to be forgiven? There's a good one. Because a lot of times Natives Americans, Black Americans who do want to go and, pursue post-secondary education don't, because it's so expensive. And I'm not talking about community college. And I'm not talking about, trade schools. I'm talking about if you want to go to university, you want to pursue a career in science or medicine, that's expensive. And a lot of times the brightest among us don't, because it's so expensive. Anyway, so I'm still following A711. That's the Assembly bill here in New Jersey. I want to know what the task force is actually going to do. It was not on the agenda yet for the committee of state and local government. I'm waiting to hear about HR 40. There was a big hoopla about that. But again, they're just talking about Africans, and that kind of annoys me because the Africans that were brought here, they were enslaved. They had it hard and rough, right? Then they were freed. What about the natives who were here already, had it rough, right? Fled or were forced out to reservations or migrated to different parts of the Americas and made homes for themselves. Nobody's talking about them. Us. Give us something, give us our due as well. So anyway, reparations are overdue. What else I want to just also talk about the New Jersey state. Oh, was I going to say something about Indians? I just wanted to read something to you about the Indians too. Well, it's not that important. You can do your own research. I was I was laughing because when you talk about Indians, I'm not trying to, throw dirt on anybody, but what do they call the Senator Warren, the bootleg Pocahontas, right? She claimed to be Cherokee because that's what her grandma and her grandpa told her or whatever. So I'm Cherokee. And I was doing the research so that I could, because there's a whole thing about, what percentage of Native are you? And it was funny because the natives are actually being, like I said, we're dying out because of the intermixing of the blood. It's funny that my children, Derek and Sharice, actually are part of the, I want to say Ramapo, the Mawa Ramapo. Their families are Mawa Ramapo, right here from North Jersey. And then they're my mother's side, my father's mother's father was Cherokee. So we need to make sure now that we, as far as our lineage goes, we are making sure that we document it clearly so that we know. And that's another thing that I had an issue with too. When you look at the census, there's nothing. I'm not a color. Black is cool. I'm the first Black council woman in the city of Linden. Yes, I'm Black. That's the color of my skin, but I want to be known as an American. That's what I am. A Black American, yes. A Native American, yes. An American. On the census, they don't give us that option. We're Black, right? Are you Black? Do you speak Spanish? Right? But then they also, everybody who is Black is lumped together. So you can be a Jamaican Black, like the vice president. They're still going to call you African American. Is that right? I mean, it's politically correct, but does it make sense? Is it right? Right? What are we going to do there? So I don't know. That's just something that we need to talk about. Yep. The census needs to have a little bit more for the ethnicity of the folks. You have Asian Pacific Islander. And then too, they don't even allow you to select multiple boxes. They should allow you to select at least two, right? So my kid actually is white and she's Black. And it's funny because now that I'm thinking about the slavery and all of the bloodlines and who gets rights to do what, in Virginia in the 1930s, there was like a big law. There was a big thing about classifying it based on the percentage of blood that you had if you were a Native and blah, blah, blah. So imagine Ashley, who, on my father's side, her grandmother's mother's father was a Cherokee. So she's a Native, right? Then her father is Caucasian. Ashley typically is Black, right? Because she has Negroid features. But is she white? Is she Native? If she lived in Virginia in 1930, she would have been considered white. Yep. Because the law said in 1930, if a woman, specifically women, they didn't say anything about the men were just basically either natives, they called them Indians, or they called them Blacks, or they called them half-breeds. If the woman, her father was white, and her father's father was white, and his father was white, even if her mother was brown, she would be considered white. How about that? I thought that was really interesting, actually. I'm going to do a lot more research on my family. I would encourage you all to do the same. So, because when it's time for the reparations, put your hands out or put it in your pocket, because everyone is not entitled to it. If your family got here after slavery was over, you're not that African American entitled to reparations as a descendant of the slaves on this soil during that specific time. Right? The reparations should be for the ancestors of slaves. Reparations should also be for the ancestors of the natives who were here and were mutilated, beaten, tossed out, enslaved. So, but it's funny. I don't know if everybody knows that the slaves from, when the natives were captured, they were enslaved, they were deported, right? Because if you were still in your native area, you were more likely than not to be able to escape because you knew the land. So they were all usually deported to like Brazil and Spain and stuff like that. So when you see the brown folks talking Spanish and they got them high cheekbones, you got to make yourself wonder, are they natives from America who were enslaved? Right? Think about that for a second. All right. Anyway, I'm cracking myself up. Do your research, people. Find out where your family is from and contact your representative at the state and at the federal level. Encourage them to fast track these bills, right? And because the A711 was introduced more than a year ago and there has been no action taken. The last action was the fact that it was sent over to the committee for discussion or, to be looked at or whatever. I don't think we need a whole task force. If you're going to do a task force, you just need to have specific goals, which is the identification of those who are entitled to the reparations. And the final thing that I do want to talk about is everyone talks about the slave mentality and post-slavery, post-traumatic slave disorder. All that is probably a thing, but more importantly, it's a culture. So slavery was what it was, but post-slavery, right, was probably more horrible after the Reconstruction, after, the white folks decided that the colored folks had no business being in the state house or being in elected positions. And you don't know how many elected officials were actually of color because the history has been ignored, overlooked, not, actually written and shared the way, in my opinion, it should be. In the state of New Jersey, we have the Amistad Act, which is supposedly supposed to encourage and teach all of the children. I think it's specific to certain grades and whatnot. One of the Paynes was actually a champion for this. It was Uncle Donald. No, not. I forgot one of the Payne brothers was the champion for the Amistad Act, but they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing with the Amistad Act. And I have only one child left in school, and my two older ones, the three older ones, there was nothing in there for them. They weren't, in high school. All you got was Black History Month. There, the textbooks didn't talk about the real history of America, the natives, or any significant accomplishments or, history of Blacks, which is one of the reasons why I actually started 11 years ago doing a Black History program and sponsoring creative writing for children in the city of Linden so that they can, the teachers would encourage them to be creative and do some research and find out about Black folks who have made history. And we continue that this year. So I'm excited about that. But I said all of that just to say, if we don't stand up and change and speak out and have these elected officials really do something, don't give me a fluff bill. Don't keep telling me that you're going to help me and set it right. And, slavery was an atrocity. Yeah. So was Jim Crow. Right? So if you talk about and reparations, why are they only linked to slavery? Right? There were reparations given to the Japanese, and the Americans were only doing what you do at wartime. They got money. So we are going to give reparations only to people who were victims of of slavery, ancestors were slaves and whatnot like that. How about you give all Black Americans reparations for the post-traumatic stress slave disorder, the post-traumatic disorder from the civil rights movement, right? We're still running around here in 2021 scared of the police. And some of the police look like us because there's a blue line, a blue code of conduct and whatnot. And God forbid that there's an officer who speaks out against someone else for being wrong. So I do applaud the New Jersey State Attorney General Graywall, because he's trying to do and bring in policies that will protect everyone in the state of New Jersey and try to right some of the wrongs. But listen, Black folks need to stand up, need to unite, and need to be clear. Just because you are brown doesn't mean that you are an American Negro, right? Are you American Negro mixed with a little Native Black? Are you American Negro mixed with a little Caucasian? Know your history. Get those reparations. Make sure you might as well make any person that is a Native for the reparations, right? Let them go to school for free, for example, something that's not going to actually create a problem, a deficit, if you will, right? Like everybody's complaining about the stimulus package. Oh, that's too much money. You're giving it to people. People already have a job or whatever like that. If I'm saying to you, you give the money for school, or you just give the opportunity for education, because at the end of the day, a lot of these colleges, a lot of these universities, those classes aren't full. It's not going to hurt that professor to add a couple extra folks to his or her roster at the end of the day for that semester. Why not? Provide education. You know why? Because they're afraid once you educate yourself and you have knowledge, then they can't stop you. That's what you need. Get your education. And I'm not talking about just, go book smart. Get educated. Do something with that education as far as helping the community, helping yourself, helping your family. And be great, because we have always been great here. Right? That's all I have. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I just wanted to just say, but all y'all call Senator Nick Scutari and tell him he played us out, you all out, and someone needs to talk to the governor and tell him to get off his shtick. And again, the holdup for legalizing officially marijuana was that the penalties for underage consumption or possession, some say it was too harsh. The ones that were proposed, the governor said that they weren't enough, and then there are some who say they shouldn't be there at all. There should be a punishment for the consumption of underage use. There should be a penalty, if anything. What it is, I did the research. If someone is under the age and they have alcohol, there's like a $500 fine for the first time. No questions, point blank. So someone said that was too harsh. I think they should be equal, actually. Make them the same punishment. If you need to change the, law or the statute for alcohol, then go ahead and do that, right? Change it. But I don't think that just possessing a joint should hold a penalty. Just like if I'm riding around, not me, but if there's an underage person who is in possession of alcohol that is not open, what penalty are you going to give that person? They don't have an open container. They haven't consumed it. So that's things that they weren't thinking about before they told New Jerseyans to go ahead and vote for legal marijuana. Additionally, what happens to the crimes? What happens to the expungement? Where are we? Just because they suggest to the local municipalities and counties, they suggest that the people are released or whatever. Suggestions are not mandates, and that's what the difference is. People don't understand that you can write anything into law, but that doesn't mean, just like the poll taxes. when they had the poll taxes. They were outlawed, but the outlaw wasn't being enforced. People were still being charged and turned away from voting. Just like New Jersey over here wants to, some of them, Worth and his partner, they want to change voting in New Jersey and require ID for all voters, right? Even if you mail in your ballot, they want you to mail in your ID. Ridiculous. All right, that's enough. I'm going to follow up and find out what's happening with the marijuana that's still not legal. Do your research. I'm enjoying talking about the natives, and some folks don't understand it. But it's a thing. Some Black Americans take umbrage to others of color who come here and capitalize and take advantage of programs that, were put in for minorities, but the minorities at the time were, Black Americans, many of whom were descendants of slaves, many of whom were not. So, all right, that's all I have to say. I will talk to you guys next week. I'm going to talk about some good New Jersey bills. Hopefully the state gets up and does some stuff, something interesting that I get to talk about. Hopefully there's no more violence in D.C. And we get to find out who's running for re-election, hopefully, in the state of New Jersey. I want you to know that every state position is up. I say that every time I talk to you guys. But if you don't vote against them, they're going to continue to do what they do to you, because a lot of times they're not doing it for you. Think about that. Stay tuned. See you next week.